Coming up today, China agrees to UN sanctions against North Korea following talks with the United States, but the two sides remain far apart on how hard to punish the regime for its nuclear test. Could North Korea be readying a ballistic missile test? A government source in Japan says final preparations are underway for a possible launch. Plus, with an eye on the global economy, the US Federal Reserve declines to raise rates but doesn't rule out an increase in March. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Thursday, January 28th, here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning, President Park Geun-hye is likely to embark on her first visit to Iran soon. If she goes, she'll become the first South Korean president to make the trip. The goal would be to boost economic cooperation with Tehran following the recent lifting of international sanctions. Song Ji-sun has the details.
President Park Geun-hye is scheduling her first summit with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. The presidential office has confirmed the trip is currently under review and further details will be released when finalized. The announcement follows Chinese President Xi Jinping's trip to Tehran last week, which made him the first state leader to visit Iran after international sanctions were lifted. The news also comes after Seoul's foreign ministry on Wednesday convened a task force on economic cooperation with Iran, the Middle East's second largest economy after Saudi Arabia. Securing MOUs for Korean companies is not an option but a must, with potential competitors already rushing to take advantage of expanding business opportunities. Seoul's outbound shipments to Tehran have shrunk by an annual rate of negative 2.5% since 2010, a sharp drop from the 20% range growth in process before stronger sanctions took effect. But the lifting of sanctions means multiple industries, ranging from manufacturing and construction to the medical and financial sectors, will now likely get a boost. If the summit between Presidents Park and Rouhani is confirmed, the North Korean nuclear issue would almost certainly be on the table as well. President Park has cited Iran as a glowing example of a country giving up its nuclear ambitions and being welcomed back into the international community, when urging Beijing to take a more active role in placing stronger sanctions on Pyongyang.
북한이 핵 개발이 아무 소용이 없다는 것을 깨닫고 이란과 같이 국제사회에 나올 수 있도록 효과 있는 조치를 해주기를 기대합니다.
President Park's Iran trip will likely take place in the spring after the Nuclear Security Summit set for March in Washington. And it's also likely she'll be accompanied by a massive business delegation, as with her Middle East trip last year. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, the United States and China have failed to reach a broad consensus over how strongly to punish North Korea for its recent nuclear test. Visiting Beijing on Wednesday, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry urged China to do more to rein in Pyongyang and cool tensions over disputed parts of the South China Sea. Our Connie Kim has the details.
The U.S. and China have failed to narrow differences on two major issues. On North Korea's nuclear weapons program, Beijing has made clear that its stance remains unchanged. Denuclearizing the Korean peninsula should be achieved through dialogue. The comments came from Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi at a press conference with his U.S. counterpart, Secretary of State John Kerry, following a meeting on Wednesday. Kerry and Wang discussed the U.S.-led UN Security Council resolution against North Korea following its nuclear test earlier this month. Kerry said the resolution could limit goods and services exchanges between Beijing and Pyongyang. Wang agreed on the need for sanctions on North Korea, but opposed to the idea of new ones, saying sanctions are not an end in themselves.
We must point out that the new resolution is not aiming to provoke tensions and destabilize the Korean peninsula.
China, a veto-wielding permanent member of the UN Security Council, has long been against heavy sanctions on its longtime ally. Kerry, however, pressed China for a shift in stance regarding the UN Security Council resolution.
China has a particular ability because of its special role in its connections to North Korea, an ability to be able to help us significantly to resolve this challenge.
Another key issue Washington and Beijing remained divided on was the South China Sea dispute. Kerry called on China to stop claiming sovereignty and constructing artificial islands and airstrips in the disputed waters. Beijing, on its side, claimed the South China Sea has been Beijing's territory since ancient times, and thus it has a right to safeguard its territorial sovereignty. Some experts say Kerry's visit to China has only reaffirmed the two countries' gap, leading to escalating tensions between the two superpowers. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, it appears North Korea could be close to conducting yet another ballistic missile test. According to a report by Tokyo-based Kyodo news agency on Wednesday, recent satellite imagery indicates North Korea may be preparing to launch a long-range missile from its main launch site in Dongchangri on its northwest coast. Now, citing a source within the Japanese government, the report said final preparations could be complete in a week's time. The source said that should the North test fire a new rocket so soon after its recent nuclear test, the UN Security Council would be left with no option but to slap more severe sanctions on the Kim Jong-un regime. The embattled leader of South Korea's main opposition party officially called it a day on Wednesday after months of internal strife and an exodus of members from the party's ranks. Shin Se-min reports.
After 354 days at the helm of the opposition front, Chairman Moon Jae-in of the Minju Party of Korea has officially stepped down this Wednesday from his post. Moon, who had lost a string of elections, including by-election and local election while chairing the party, said he will focus now on helping the party prepare for the coming parliamentary elections in April.
I am relieved to be resigning at a time when there is new hope within the party, thanks to new innovations and new recruits.
Moon named the head of the party's election campaign committee, Kim Jong-in, as the interim chief, taking full authority to lead the main opposition bloc into the general elections scheduled for April 13th. The former party chief also handed over his role of leading the party's new membership recruitment to Kim Sang-gon, former head of the party's reform committee. The resignation comes as Moon faced a grave amount of pressure to take full responsibility over the lawmakers leaving the main opposition bloc. Meanwhile, the minor opposition camp continued its move on building up its body. Ahn Cheol-soo's People's Party merged with Park Ju-sun, who also defected from the main opposition party when it was formerly known as the New Politics Alliance for Democracy. During a joint press conference Wednesday, the two lawmakers said their solidarity aims to change the ruling government during the next presidential election. With the merger, Ahn's People's Party now owns 17 parliamentary seats, just 3 shy of what's needed for it to form its own negotiation group. Now, for those on the left, the party's growing strength has raised concerns of a further split in progressive votes in the coming election. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, National Assembly Speaker Jung Woo-ha has proposed revisions to the National Assembly law. His move is part of efforts to break up the parliamentary stalemate as bipartisan rows over unrelated political issues have delayed voting on urgent bills. Ji Myung-gil reports.
National Assembly Speaker Chung Lee-hwa on Wednesday presented the latest bid in his efforts to break the deadlock that has stalled legislative operations for months.
We must amend the National Assembly law the right way. We must take out elements that can be deemed unconstitutional. I propose measures that will make Parliament more productive.
Chung's plan is to restore majority rule. Under the current law, deadlocked bills can be put up for a vote only when 60% of lawmakers or 180 of the parliament's 300 representatives agree. Chung wants to drop the 60% requirement and let a majority of lawmakers make the call. The main opposition Minju Party, which had initially been open to Chung's proposal, now says it needs more time with it.
We cannot accept Speaker Chung's proposal at this time. We will discuss ways to revise the law in the Parliamentary Steering Committee.
However, the party has already rejected a part of Chung's proposal that would put a time limit of 90 days on deliberations for all bills. When the time is up, the bill would automatically be sent to the floor for a vote. There is currently no deadline for deliberations. And believe it or not, this is one point the ruling party can agree with.
Reducing the deliberation time will not solve everything. Although our party's plan may fall short of expectations, the Speaker should still back it.
The party has been demanding that Chung use his power as Speaker to bring long-stalled bills to the floor for a vote. Under the current law enacted in 2012, the Speaker can introduce a bill for a vote only in the event of a natural disaster, a state emergency, or under a bipartisan agreement. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's creative economy centres are steadily achieving their goal of helping Korea become a country that can flourish in the fast-paced 21st century. The Gwangju branch in the southwest of the country, which is the country's sixth, marked an important milestone on Wednesday. For a look back at the centre's achievements over the past 12 months, Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Some 300 people, including the Minister of Science, ICT and Future Planning, gathered to celebrate the first anniversary of the Gwangju Center for Creative Economy and Innovation on Wednesday. The center in Jeollanam province is part of a network of 17 centers nationwide devoted to creating a business ecosystem of local startups and small businesses, with the ultimate goal of realizing the government's vision of a creative economy. Each center has a specialty and a corporate partner to provide resources and advice. The Gwangju Center's focus is the automobile sector and hydrogen fuel cell development, and it is funded in part by the country's leading automaker Hyundai Motor and its affiliate Kia Motors. The Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning says the center was created in line with the government's goal of achieving a hydrogen economy, or a society that uses eco-friendly hydrogen as its main energy source.
One of the center's big achievements this year is the creation of a charging station that was completed earlier this month, and I hope through deregulation that more like it can be created in the future. It's a multi-energy source charging facility equipped with a fuel cell generator that can charge both electric and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles.
The ministry says the center has fostered 10 hydrogen-related venture firms over the past year, attracting roughly $4.8 million in investment so far. On top of that, the ministry says the center has helped the region's auto industry save roughly $1.8 million over the past year through the establishment of a smart factory that applies Internet of Things technology to production lines. Going forward, the center has plans to build more smart factories in the region. It has already secured an additional $8.3 million for the project from Hyundai and Gwangju municipal government. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News, Gwangju.
Now, the US Federal Reserve has decided to keep its benchmark interest rate unchanged. In a statement at the end of its two-day meeting in Washington on Wednesday, the Federal Open Market Committee said it would hold steady the federal funds rate at 0.25% to 0.5%. Fed policymakers said they expected US economic growth to remain low in the short term, mainly due to the crash in oil prices, but expressed confidence inflation will push towards its 2% target in the medium term. The Fed said it will continue to assess expected economic conditions relative to the labour market and inflation before its next policy meeting in March. Now, Brazil is deploying some 200,000 troops to go door to door with advice on how to combat the spread of the Zika virus, which has been linked to some extremely serious birth defects. And the outbreak is now spreading beyond Brazil and South America, with cases reported in 3 US states now: California, Virginia and Arkansas. And a man in Denmark has been confirmed as Europe's first case. You're looking at some of the cases in Brazil there. Now, all of the patients in Europe and the US had recently returned from trips to South America. US President Barack Obama, through his spokesman, has called for the rapid development of tests, vaccines and treatments to fight the Zika virus. Health officials say pregnant women Anyone with a chronic illness and those with weakened immune systems should reconsider travel plans to Zika-affected countries in the Caribbean and Central and South America. Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for watching. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Until then, goodbye.